Hi guys! Okay, so today marks 6 years without alcohol. So I wanted to make a video on, I guess, what made me realize I was an alcoholic, when I started drinking, and what led to me getting sober. So when I started drinking, I was around 12 years old. I was hanging out with a lot of kids that were kind of, I guess, in the same position I was. They were in pretty rough environments, and we all kind of just gravitated towards each other and used alcohol to cope. So at 12 years old, I was out all night drinking in the field. Like, I was basically living like an adult when I was 12. So I was drinking a lot, partying, I was having boyfriends. It was it was a lot of chaos in my childhood because it was a lot of chaos in my household. And my parents were extremely big drinkers, so growing up, I just kind of looked at drinking as like fun. Drinking was fun to me. That was what fun was. So growing up, I kept drinking. In high school, I had drank a lot. It got me in trouble with the law a lot. I got in a lot of fights. I was extremely angry. And I didn't know it at the time, but I did have borderline in my teen years. And these symptoms I was suppressing with alcohol, but the alcohol was also heightening my symptoms. So it was really chaotic. When I drank, it was not good. However, I did continue drinking throughout my high school years. I started drinking a lot when I got into college. I was drinking a lot already, however, once I got into college, it became more of like an everyday thing rather than like an every 4 day thing. So in college, I started drinking a lot. I had a best friend at the time. I did not realize that she was my FP, so I had consumed her moods. I had consumed her really without even realizing it, and we became inseparable. We drank a lot, we got into a lot of trouble together, and our friendship was very intense. So that happened. I was getting in a lot of trouble. I was getting into, reckless driving, impulsive spending on other people, like always. Like I never had money because I was always spending money on other people. I was sleeping with people I didn't even like or people that I would never even like bat an eye at had I not had been drinking. And I was hanging around friends that didn't even care about me. Like they would take my car and just drive out all night when I was like drunk, passed out. Like people that just really did not care about me. And I surrounded myself with people that didn't care about me because I really wanted to be cared about. And when you want to be cared about, you kind of gravitate towards people that don't really care about you, oddly enough. So I surrounded myself with a lot of bad people. Relationships in high school were extremely chaotic. I drank a lot with my partners, which would also add to fights. We would always get in fights. I did have long-lasting relationships throughout my life. However, it was very makeup and breakup, and I did have consistent relationships. So as soon as that one ended, whether it be a year or 2 years, I would get into a new one. And I found that alcohol just kind of suppressed everything in my life. And as I started getting older, I started becoming like 17, 18, and I started drinking with my parents. And I started realizing that it's kind of like the only way we had to bond. So I kind of used that as like a way to bond with my parents because like the only thing we had in common was drinking. And when we drank together, like we hung out and we enjoyed each other's company. So like that was what I thought we should do together because like drinking with my parents made me feel close to them. So drinking with my parents happened a lot. We would always drink on weekends. My parents would drink every single night. My mom would be on the couch drinking wine. My dad would be in the garage drinking beer. And it was just a lot of resentment in the household. Everybody was always drinking, a lot of unhappiness. And as I was getting older, my drinking started getting a lot out of hand. And my parents didn't really notice this. Or maybe they did, but they chose to ignore it. I don't know. But I started reckless driving a lot. And my parents just didn't really care. Like, it was almost like everything was a joke to them. Like, I would come home the next day and it would just be a joke. And they'd like kind of laugh, oh, you were so drunk last night. But like for me, I was like dying inside. And I had realized that it was not going well living with my parents, so I did live on my own. Drinking got tremendously bad when I lived on my own because I was extremely lonely it's not that I wasn't lonely at home, because I was, but there were people there. So it just like, as it was very different. Like, I was going home, I didn't have anybody to come home to. I just absorbed myself in alcohol. Like, I was so lonely. Alcohol kind of gave me that sense of feeling alive. Music sounded better when I was drinking. I didn't have to deal with my problems. I had more confidence when I was drinking, so like I could say things I wouldn't say when I was sober. And just things like that. Like, even when it came to like sex, like I had more confidence in bed when I was drinking. So it really did give me that sense of like, oh, life is so much better when I'm drunk, but really it wasn't. And I moved out of my parents' house, and I would visit them, and I would just go drink with them at night, and then I would go back home and drink. And I would go back to my parents' house, they'd give me a couple beers, and then I'd go back home, and it was a constant cycle. And I would go into work drunk, but not say anything, and I did not get caught for a long time. My parents, I'm sure my mom noticed, but didn't really say anything to me ever. She would pick me up sometimes in the morning when I was hungover, because I fell asleep on the couch after drinking a bottle of vodka, and I could not even like function. So I'd wake up in the morning and be like, oh my God, I'm late for work. And I'd miss my ride, and I'd have to get my mom to come drive me to work. I lost my license because of drinking, so I could not get to work. My mother, at this point, would drive me to work consistently every single morning. This was a pattern. I would follow with a bottle of alcohol. I would barely eat. I'd pass out on the couch, and then my mom would come pick me up, drive me to work. I'd get alcohol, and then I'd go home, and it was just a pattern. I spent every single cent I had on alcohol. I was at a place where I was letting people into my life, like people over in my house. I didn't even know people were there, other than seeing the cigarette butts, and that's what made me realize people were in my house. Like, I just had no comprehension that somebody was there. That's how drunk I was getting. And it was to the point where I was bringing people in my house just to have that sense of company. Like, people that I didn't even know, guys I didn't even know I was bringing into my house. Like, I completely lost myself. And I remember one night I had got extremely drunk, and I had done something on Snapchat. Like, I posted something on Snapchat, and unfortunately I had an episode that night, so I got sent to the hospital. So when I was in the hospital, I didn't realize I did that on Snapchat. It was there, it was posted for 24 hours. I came out, and of course, what did I do? Because that happened, I consumed myself with alcohol again, and it just kept being a pattern. And when I was 20, I had gotten this job at like a pet food store or whatever, and I went into work, and I was extremely drunk one day and decided, okay, well, I'm not going to go into work this day. So I went into work the day before. The next day, it was like a Wednesday or something like that, and I was supposed to go into work at like 8. I decided I was going to call in sick and just drink the whole day because I just felt like drinking. So that's what I did. I drank, but a coworker from that place came over to my house and was like, you should go to work drunk, it'll be fun, blah, blah. And me, being a people pleaser and having absolutely no sense of identity, did anything to please anybody. So I went to work, and I went to work extremely drunk, like to the point where this is not something I could have hid at work. I was extremely intoxicated. So I went into work, and as soon as I got in there, I was stumbling, and I could see people watching me. However, I just kind of just went and did my job. I grabbed a piece of paper. I kind of tripped a little bit as I was getting the paper. Somebody asked me if I was okay. I was like, yeah, I'm good. Everything's good. And then my boss had called me on the intercom. And so everybody just kind of looked at me, and I like stumbled up, and I like tripped going up the stairs. So I was already embarrassed at that point because everybody was already looking at me. I get into the office, and the boss tells me that he knows I'm drunk. So he was telling me that he has to let me go. And honestly, at this point, it wasn't a job that I worked at for a long time. Like, I was there for maybe a month. It was a temp agency job that I got. Like, it wasn't like I was there for years and this guy owed me anything, like a letter of, like to help me out in life. But he told me that he knew I was drunk and he was going to call me a cab. At the time, obviously I was drunk, so I was very angry, screaming at him, saying things like, don't you have children? Do you not know what it's like to, be drunk, and just stupid things. And he escorted me out. I had fallen down the stairs, going back to the car. When I had gotten to the car, which was my mother's because they did call my mom to pick me up, I had got in the car with my mom and it was very uncomfortable. However, she didn't really mention much about it. She just said, like, you know, I'm gonna drive you home. Like, you know, you've been drinking a lot. Try to get some rest, kind of thing. And she said, like, do you think you have a problem? And like, now that I look back, like, do you think I had a problem? Like, obviously. But now that I look back at it, I did say no at that time. I said, no, I don't think I have a problem. I'm fine. And I went home that night. That night, that same coworker brought me more alcohol. I guess, I don't know if it was to apologize or whatever, but they did bring me that alcohol. And I decided that I could not drink again. I was extremely sick, and I had been sick before, but because I was drinking so consistently, hangovers didn't really happen because I would drink them away. So if I felt sick, I would just drink the next day and it would just go away because I was drunk. So at this point, I felt extremely shaky. I didn't know it at the time, but now I do, that I was having alcohol withdrawals, and I didn't understand what was going on. I couldn't really move. I was so shaky. I was so sick. It literally, I can't even explain the feeling I felt. Like, it was just like death. And this coworker had come to my house, brought alcohol, and when they brought the bottle of alcohol, I realized that I could not drink it. I went to go take a sip of it, obviously, and it made me gag, so I dumped it down the drain. And then the next day, I did call my mom. I said, I'm ready to go to detox and get sober. And she said, okay. So she had drove me to a Woman's Own, which is in Toronto, a detox center, and I had got sober there. I was there for like a little over 3 weeks, and that was April 7th, 2016. I went in sober, and I remember thinking too, like, at the time when I went in, like, I was pissed because people went in drunk, and I didn't know you could go drunk, so I like wanted to be drunk when I went in, so I definitely knew I was supposed to be there. I definitely knew there was a problem with alcohol, probably later on into it, like probably 3 weeks before I got sober. That's when I really knew something was up. And as soon as I did start to notice a problem, I did get help for it. I'm not sure what made me get help for it. I was just so sick of living the way that I was. I was so lonely. I had no friends. I didn't even like being around myself. I just wanted to drink every day. I had no money at that point. I was about to lose my apartment. I lost my job. So I think that I was just, I felt that I was really losing everything at that point. And the only thing I had to do, or could do, was get sober, because that was the only thing that was going to allow me to have a clear headspace. Like, I couldn't even get groceries because I was so drunk all the time that, I couldn't even focus while getting groceries. So I just really needed to get my life back in track and start to get on my feet again and pick myself up and get my license back and, start to fix my life. And when I got out, I did 60 and 60, which is 60 meetings in 60 days, AA meetings. I went in, I was people pleasing the whole time. It was definitely not for me. I did it because I thought that I had to, but I was glad I did because I realized it wasn't for me. But I thought that was kind of what I was supposed to do. When I got out of detox, people did criticize me because I wasn't going to rehab. They told me that I wouldn't stay sober, I was going to relapse, etc. I am 6 years sober today. I have not relapsed. I have been very determined to stay sober. I think the one thing that helps me stay sober in my life is because I've had such a lack of control throughout my entire life that when I finally got sober, I realized it was the one thing I could control. And I could control staying sober. Nobody could take that away from me but me. And I think that made me feel so safe, just knowing that, like, this is something in my life that, no matter what, nobody can take this from me unless I choose to take this from me. So this is something that is 100% in my control. And it's the only thing that I felt I could control in my life. And having that sense of control keeps me going. Like, it's so hard to have no control in your life with your emotions, with how you're feeling. And, so at the end of the day, like, obviously my life didn't get extremely better while drinking. Like, it did get a lot harder because I was dealing with my emotions and I was finally dealing with my stuff. But it did get a lot more manageable. I can see things clearly now. I was able to deal with my mental health. I was able to see that my parents were extremely emotionally abusive. I didn't even know I was being emotionally abused until my 20s. Like, so many things, getting sober gave me the space to see clearly. And it was amazing because even like, it's so odd to say, but even like getting out and getting sober, like looking up at trees was so different to me because I felt I was looking down so much. I was always drunk. I just was in my own world. I didn't really look at the trees and look at life. And I really consumed myself with alcohol. And now looking back at it, I understand that I was trying to cope with a lot of borderline symptoms. And it's so interesting that, that's what I went to as a coping mechanism, not realizing how much that was really affecting me and how much that was actually making my symptoms worse and making life harder to manage, because I would get drunk and make horrible mistakes out of impulse. And then the next day I would feel extreme anxiety for what I did, and I would cringe all day, and then I'd have to drink to forget it. And I don't do that anymore. Like, I don't cringe over things like that. Like, the most I cringe over is if I like trip and then I'm starting to cringe, but I don't cringe because of what, like, the decisions I've made. Like, I know I'm human now, and I just have that awareness to, give myself that space to heal rather than judge myself. And I also have very different impulses now. Like, when it comes to drinking, my impulses were sleeping with other people I didn't care about, doing things that were completely out of my morals. Whereas now my impulses are more like, the way that I speak and saying something out of impulse because I'm angry. So it's very different. And, I do want people to know that when you do get sober, it is going to feel like that is the worst decision you made for a while, because you're going to feel so empty not having that, coping mechanism that you've always had. But you are making the right decision. Getting sober really helps you see things clearly. It's not going to completely heal your life, but again, it is going to make things more manageable. And getting sober at 20 years old was a really big decision for me, but I didn't second guess it, and that's why I got sober. Like, I didn't sit there and think, oh, I'm too young to get sober, I shouldn't get. I just did it. Like, I was sick, I was feeling sick, I just needed to get sober. It wasn't something I thought of. I didn't even really know I was an alcoholic for a long time before that. Like, 3 weeks before I got sober, I really started to realize a problem. I was hiding alcohol bottles when my parents came over, and I just started to realize things like that were not normal. Drinking every day, drinking to do anything. And so when I had gotten sober, because drinking was so much a part of my life, I had to really learn how to live without it. And it was hard. I felt like I couldn't really enjoy fun because drinking was my sense of fun. So birthdays really sucked. Parties really sucked. I felt like I didn't really have much friends because a lot of my friends were drinking buddies, and I thought they were real friends. And when you take away the alcohol, we did not have much in common. And that was really hurtful to realize. So I had to basically build my life from scratch again. And had I had thought about that stuff, it really would have taken me a long time to get sober. So I just had to do it. Like, I know that a lot of people will reach out to me and be like, how did you get sober? I just went to detox. Like, I can't really, there's no easy way around it. I just went, I got help to get on my feet. I had that space where I could get sober. It's extremely difficult, yet it's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult to get sober when you're in an environment, say, like, if I was at my parents' house, like, or on my own, it would have been so hard to get sober. But because I was away from home, I was in an environment where I was learning, I was with trained professionals, it was different. I was able to have that space to get sober. And having that 3 to almost 4 weeks of sobriety to get on my feet really helped me, because if I would have, even say if I had a week of sobriety, I probably would have drank again. But it gave me a whole almost month to really sober myself up. And it took a while before I really started to feel like myself. Probably, 2 weeks in, and then I started to really feel normal. I was dying. I was literally killing myself off with alcohol. I was so pale. I was so thin. I was barely eating. Like, I was like 110 pounds. Like, I was very frail, and I wasn't doing anything to help my health. I wasn't eating right. I just was in this pattern of like, oh, I can't eat because if I eat, then I'm not going to get as drunk and it's just a waste. And I was living a horrible life, a lonely life. And now I still, live a lonely life at times because I struggle with borderline, but I understand myself differently. Like, I understand that I have borderline, and I understand that these parts are parts of my borderline, and I know how to manage them now. Whereas when I was drinking, that didn't give me the clear space to learn how to manage my life. So that being said, getting sober at 20 was the best decision I made for myself. I don't regret it at all. I have been tremendously hard on myself, and it's been very hard for me to be proud of myself because I feel like I've kind of ruined my life by like not drinking or something, because I just, all my friends were drinking that were at that age, friends. Everybody my age was kind of partying, and being 20, I was like, oh my God, I stopped drinking at 20. What did I do? So it was really hard, for me to really feel proud of myself and feel proud for what I did. And people would say, I'm so proud of what you did, And for me, it took me a while to really understand that what I did was a huge decision. I should be proud of myself. And, every single month I light a candle on the 7th to show how proud I am. And today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my younger self a letter. I'm going to take really nice care of myself, be kind to myself, eat good food, and I'm just going to be kind to myself today. I'm trying to learn that, I've come a really long way, and getting sober in your 20s at any age is extremely tough, but getting sober in your 20s can be very difficult, especially when so many people your age seem to only be partying. So I feel very isolated at times, but I'm learning that I'd rather feel this type of isolation than the isolation I felt from the choices I was making from drinking. So at the end of the day, life is extremely different. Life has been a lot better. I'm coping a lot better in life. And even now, like reflecting back, like I used to reflect back and be like, oh, I wish I could drink. I wish I could do this. And I still have times like that, but they're not as prominent. Before, when I was drinking, I used to think about it all the time. Now, like alcohol will cross my mind maybe a couple times a week when something happens, like say I get upset about something, or if I get extremely bored, then I'll feel like I want to drink because I don't know what to do. So I'm learning to get over those things, and I'm learning to acknowledge those feelings and try to do something else. So instead of, oh, I'm bored, I need to drink, I'll make a coffee and clean the house. So just trying to like substitute the behavior. That being said, today is an extremely big day for me today, and I do want to try to let people know that if you are struggling with alcohol at a young age and you feel like you're too young to get sober, you're not. You're never too young and you're never too old to change your life. And it's important to understand that, because a lot of the times people will be like, oh, you're too young to be an alcoholic. People party in their 20s. But that's not true. Like, not the way that I was partying, not the way that some of us do party. It's okay to have a drink once in a while, but it's not okay to be an alcoholic. And you can absolutely be an alcoholic in your 20s. You can absolutely be an alcoholic as a teenager. And it's important for people to identify that, because a lot of people will use this, excuse that, oh, you're young. And then it sits in our brains and it makes us not want to get help. One thing especially I heard a lot when I was getting sober is, relapsing is a part of recovery. And so for when I got sober, I just kind of assumed that eventually I would be able to relapse. And I knew that getting sober, oh, it's okay, I'll drink eventually. And I kind of put that in my head. And then because I wasn't relapsing, I felt like, oh, am I really an alcoholic? Or, because I should be relapsing. And it's important to understand that relapsing is not a part of recovery. It's a part of some people's recovery, but you don't relapse all the time. Like it's not just a part of recovery. It can be a part of people's story, but it's not a part of my story. I have not relapsed. And it's important to understand that if you don't, it doesn't mean that you're not an alcoholic. You just don't want to relapse. And, some people choose not to go that route. I've relapsed with my mental health several times, but I haven't relapsed with alcohol. We all go through different things in life. And it's just important to identify that we all have different stories. So instead of saying, relapse is a part of recovery, it can be a part of recovery. And I just kind of wanted to note that at the end. But anyways, guys, I have to do an assignment that I have been holding off for so long, and I just kind of wanted to come on here and talk about this. I will come on Saturday and talk about teens and BPD and how I felt being a teen undiagnosed with borderline compared to being an adult and being diagnosed, and I will explain the difference in coping and how it has changed my life tremendously. That being said, guys, have a wonderful day, and take care of yourselves today.